Hello angels, my name is Azrael and welcome to the LostParadiseGarden. Whether you're fallen from grace or just visiting for a little while, you're always welcome here, so rest your weary wings and come and take a walk through the garden with me. There's this little game series. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's a little indie game. It was made by pretty much just one person. It's a little, single-player experience, very simple visuals, very simple effects, point-and-click mechanics. And it made hundreds of millions of dollars. We are, of course, talking about Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, of course, needs very little introduction, but for those of you who don't know about it, hi, welcome to the internet, it's good to hear from you. Five Nights at Freddy's is a video game series that came out in 2014 on August 8th. The very first game was a small single-player indie game developed by the same person who made Minecraft, actually, Hatsune Miku. The first game was a little single-player experience that was made by a person called Scott Cawthon. Now, I do jest a little bit about that. For those of you who don't know, Scott Cawthon himself is a little bit of a debated individual. There are people who have gone into it in more and better detail than I have, and probably much more eloquently and more knowledgeably than I have. For the purposes of this video, I will just leave it as his political leanings and standpoints on things from what we have seen do not paint a very good picture of him as a person outside of the gaming community and outside of his creations. So we will leave it at that for now. I'm not going to go any further into depth into him. From here on out, I'll just be talking about the series and the movies themselves. So we'll go from here. So I sent my human form to the mortal world to see the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, and I've had a good time. The movie itself at this point, according to Google, has grossed over $200 million worldwide already. And I'm honestly not that surprised. It has not received very good critical reception. I'm also not surprised. Video game movies very seldom do in the first place, and I can see why critics might not care for this movie. And I'll get into that in quite a bit more detail. So, to kind of cover my background and knowledge, I have not played a single Five Nights at Freddy's game myself. I am not built for them. I do not have the reflexes or the mental skills that are required for the FNAF games as a whole. Unfortunately. I have, however, seen the first 4 games, 1, 2, 3, and 4, obviously. I've seen a couple of clips from Sister Location. I've seen Henry Emily's amazing monologue from the end of Pizzeria Simulator.
For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole, so don't keep the devil waiting, friend.
And then, of course, Security Breach. I love Security Breach. Oh, Montino. Just pretend he's not there like the rest of the game series is doing right now. Ruin. I love Security Breach. I might be in the minority on that, but I really, really enjoyed Security Breach, at least from a watching perspective. I understand why a lot of people in the fandom don't like it. Again, much like I understand why critics did not like this movie. But it is my personal favorite game, so maybe someday I will go back. I've heard that Sister Location is a little bit more like Security Breach in the way that it plays compared to the first 4 games. So who knows, maybe I'll go back and play that myself someday. Maybe even on the channel, I might be coerced into it, twist my leg a little. So watching the movie was a fun experience. Seeing the trailers for other movies was an adventure because I kept forgetting that I was there to see a horror movie. So they kept showing trailers for other horror movies, and I kept being like, wow, this is a lot of horror stuff here for a kids movie. Oh wait, this is a horror movie. Oops. So that was a little funny. It kept happening too. I kept forgetting it and re-remembering every time they'd show another trailer for a horror movie. And it has been a while. I have not seen a lot of movies in theaters. My last one that I popped into the human world for was the D&D movie, which I also loved. And I was not prepared for just how long the period of advertisements have gotten, but it's just an old Fallen Angels complaint, so we'll skip over that for now. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna give my opinions on the movie. I actually have several of them. This review is not going to be a spoiler-free review. I will warn you up front right now. So if you are looking for a spoiler-free review, I may consider doing a spoiler-free review as well and uploading that separately, but this is not it. So if you want to remain unspoiled and you haven't seen the movie yet, which I do recommend you do not proceed beyond this point. Spoilers, here there be dragons, here there be spoilers. So you are warned, continue at your own risk. So I'm gonna go ahead and recap the events of the movie and give my thoughts on it as a whole. And we'll get a little bit of an overview of why this movie poses the question of, is William Afton perhaps the unsung hero of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise? So, yeah, let's dive in. So to break it down, obviously the movie exists in a separate canon from the games. Separately from the games are the books, which are their own canon as well. And those are also separate from the movie, so be prepared for that. I will compare a little bit. I have watched a lot of lore videos. I have read a lot about the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's, so even though I haven't seen or played all of them, I do have a pretty solid knowledge about the actual story. Not as good as some people's for sure, but solid enough base. So I might tap a little bit into it, but we are moving forward with the understanding that this is a separate canon. This is its own world. So we start out with the standard horror movie opening of a security guard trying to break his way through a vent to escape the security office. Now, it is my understanding from a little bit of my research online that this role was initially supposed to be played by Markiplier, who, if you're not aware, unfortunately does not have a cameo in this movie, which is heartbreaking. His playthroughs are the ones that I've watched predominantly, and they are classic, they are beautiful. He really was one of the people who made Five Nights at Freddy's what it is today, and Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the things that really made Markiplier what he is today. So the two do go hand in hand. From my understanding, from what I've read online, there's no deeper reason behind why he wasn't in the movie, but beyond it conflicted with his work on his movie, the Iron Lung movie. So unfortunately, we don't get to see him in this one. Who knows? Maybe in the next one. There's probably gonna be a next one. Shocker. It's $200 million. Of course there's gonna be another one. So we see this security guard who, because he's an unnamed kind of unintegral character to the plot dying. I'm just going to assume his name is Jeremy. But he is being pursued, so he's trying to escape, nearly does, drops his flashlight like an idiot, because he's a horror movie character, and he gets attacked and captured. And this is where one of the weird little changes in this movie happens. And the movie has a lot of these strange things where it's like it tried to take the original concept and make it scarier, and in doing so it made it less scary. So when after he's captured, we see him fastened down in a chair with a Freddy Fazbear head descending towards him, facing outwards, and on the inside it has saw blades, is what it looks like. And I'm not sure, like, my first thought was maybe this was intended to be like the gears of it, but it's saw blades. They're making saw blade noises. They're rotating like saw blades. It's clearly saw blades. So instead of the whole, oh, you get stuffed into a suit and you're not, your body can't do that, which is the premise of the games of what happens to you if they catch you, you get saw-bladed for some reason. So it really, that kind of took me out of that moment because I was too busy going, just, what? To actually be frightened. So that was one of those weird little changes that they made, and I don't think it was a successful one. So he tries to escape the chair. He tries to undo the fastenings, and obviously he dies. But then we're treated to the intro credits, and I'm not gonna lie, the intro credits are one of my favorite parts of the movie, which I never thought I would say about a movie. The intro credits are done in the style of the little mini games throughout the FNAF games. In the little, I don't even know if it's 8-bit, 16-bit, but however many bits. But you know the ones. And the unfortunate thing about them is it does say a little too much. It's like, okay, we're just going to give you all of the information now. We have this guy in a golden bunny suit. Maybe it's an animatronic, maybe it's a guy. It's pretty obvious it's actually a guy. And he's leading children away for nefarious purposes. It's very obvious. And it lines things up either too much or very nicely, depending on how you really look at it. I think it would be perfect if this information was not again explained later. So I think they should have just kept this intro and not have explained him again later. That would have been better, but we'll get there. So we get this whole intro, and again, it is visually very, very good. I really liked it. But that aside, after the credits, we get to our main character, Mike, who is played by Josh Hutcherson. We are going to be trapped in a pizzeria with Josh Hutcherson. He is currently a security guard at a mall, and he is on a lunch break, and he sees a little boy standing alone, and a guy comes and kind of grabs the little boy, and the little boy protests as he's being taken away. And Mike immediately assumes the worst. And forgive me, I don't remember if I said his name is Mike Schmidt. And he immediately assumes the worst and chases the guy down, and as a security guard, not a police officer, tackles the guy into a big water fountain and proceeds to beat the ever-living fuck out of him. And it's kind of funny, actually, because everybody around him is just like, oh my goodness, and the little kid's like, Daddy, no! And it's like, oh, we all knew this was gonna happen. And we get a hard cut to him sitting in an employment office, and it's actually a very good cut. It just bam, suddenly he's sitting in an employment office. It tells you everything you need to know. And I very much enjoyed that. I actually enjoyed a lot of the editing and cinematography in this movie. I'll touch on it a bit more at the end, but I definitely enjoyed that one. Just, he's here now. So in the employment agency, we are introduced to the employment agent. I don't remember what name he was given, but he was played by Matthew Lillard, or Lillard, might be how it's pronounced. He's known for being the guy who played Shaggy in the live-action Scooby-Doo movies, if I'm not mistaken. And honestly, for that part, decent casting. But he's very much the "why are you here, Mike? Every week we go through this" kind of person. And it's definitely funny because you do get the impression that they've been through this quite a few times before, and you do get that backstory that Mike has been in and out of jobs and he's really struggling to hold a job down. I say actually that they've been through this before, but now that I think about it, you get the impression they've been through this before, but the dialogue implies this is their first time meeting. Because he sees Mike's file and he says his name. He's like, Michael and then he stops. Because he knows something. And it's suspicious. But what does he know? We don't know. The audience doesn't know. Now, my first thought is, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, Mike Schmidt in the first Five Nights at Freddy's is agreed upon generally in the fandom to either be Michael Afton or William Afton in disguise. Usually I believe it's agreed to be Michael Afton. In this one, he is not. There is no Michael Afton according to this movie. Mike Schmidt is his own character, completely separate from the Afton family altogether. So we don't know at that point what he's reacting to. Now, my thought was that he was recognizing the name and somehow was associating it with William Afton. I was incorrect. But we'll get to that. So he, at that point, offers Mike the job to be the security guard at Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, or whatever they're calling it in this one. And it's obviously that's the one that he's offering him. But Mike tells him that he can't work nights. So he's like, all right, well, if you want the job later, here's my card, call me, and Mike leaves. Mike returns home, sad, distraught, and we see the babysitter for his little sister. His babysitter's name is Max, I believe. And she was played by Kat Connor Sterling, and I really like how she played this character, actually. And you kind of get a little bit of chemistry between Mike and Max. It's kind of implied that they either were a couple at one point, or she's a little bit into him, and it's not necessarily not reciprocated either. Like there's definitely a little bit of a something between them, but it's not stated. So kind of you get the impression, okay, maybe this is going to be our love interest for the movie. And she's watching the shopping channel or something, and they're selling a ring, and she's like, I wish someone would buy me a ring. And he's like, yeah, cool, whatever. So, and you get the impression that she's a good babysitter generally. Sometimes when you see a babysitter watching television in a movie, that's usually a sign, oh, they're inattentive. But with this one, she's like, oh yeah, I made dinner. It's still warm. If you want any, it's still ready. He asks her, has Abby eaten, that being his little sister, and she's like, what do you think? So clearly these two have known each other for quite a while. There's a history with these characters. So I get the vibe that she's been a babysitter for these two for a while. But he goes into his sister's room, and this is where we're introduced to Abby, played by Piper Rubio. And at first, when I first saw her, I did not really like the actress's look for this. Nothing against the actress, but I did not like the way that her hair and costuming were done. There's just something about like the little tight ringlets that she had as the character that just didn't match Mike's aesthetic. There was just something about it that just rang wrong in my brain. But you immediately kind of get a tension, and you get that weird kid energy from her. She's drawing, and there's drawings all over the walls. And you'll have to forgive me because obviously my recounting here is going to be from having seen the movie one time. And I did not have a notebook with me. Unfortunately, I didn't take notes. So this is all from memory. So there are a couple of points where my memory is a little bit foggy, and I'll try to speak up where those were. So I don't remember if it is brought up at this point or not that Abby has an imaginary friend. Because I believe at this point, Mike sits on the bed and she's like, "You're sitting on my friend," and he gives her like a sassy like, "Well, I'm real." And I actually do really like that exchange. It gives actual sibling energy. But he tries to get her to eat, and she doesn't really respond. And he's got that tired, "Oh, can you just do this for me?" like dad energy to him. So he goes to bed that night, despondently, and you see over his bed he's got this poster of Nebraska because everybody wants to go there. With trees. It's a very generic one. And then he goes to sleep. And again, if I'm remembering the order of events correctly, this is where we get the first kind of a history dump for him and the explanation for the mall incident. Because the mall incident felt personal. Immediately you could tell something about the way that Mike is reacting here is not just, "Oh, this guy is a security guard that thinks something bad is happening." There was something personal about the way that he is beating this guy up. So he goes to sleep, and you get kind of a neat transition from like the him looking at the poster, and the trees start moving, and suddenly they're in a forest. And you get a memory of him as a little kid. You see their parents, but instead of mentioning a little sister, he's much younger, so too young for Abby to be alive. And instead they mention a little brother named Garrett. And the parents ask him, "Can you keep an eye on your brother?" He looks away for a second, of course. When he looks back, he hears a car driving away. He starts to run after it, and he sees his little brother in the back seat looking out the rear window, and you get the indication his brother was never seen again. So that's Mike's tragic backstory. His brother was kidnapped, presumed dead. So we move on to the next day, at least we assume it's the next day, where Mike and his aunt, and it's not clear if it's an exact relation or how they're related beyond just aunt, are in a doctor's office of some kind. She seems to be related to school, but her actual role is a little vague, but she's just here for exposition, really. So they're in the office with this doctor at the school. She's not like a MD doctor. She seems more like a school therapist type doctor. And the aunt immediately is like berating him for being tired because how dare he. And the aunt is essentially threatening him for custody of Abby. She gives him the papers for him to willingly sign custody of Abby over to her, and says that if he does not willingly sign her over to the aunt, then she will take him to court. Now, the standout of this scene to me, now the aunt, her actress was great, Mary Stuart Masterson. I know I've seen her in something, but I haven't looked it up. I know she's in something else I've seen, but the standout in this was Doug. Doug is her lawyer, and he's played by Michael Sullivan, who I also know I've seen in something else, but he is fantastic. I love him. He just sits there with his briefcase up to his neck just the whole time, and he just does not interact or really respond besides just like breathing heavily and like seems completely out of it. Like, this man is flashing back to the war 24/7. I don't know what it is about this character that I like so much. I love the way that he is acted. It is just so good. But she says that she will sue for custody of the sister. And then we cut to just Mike talking to the doctor lady by himself. And he says, and this is one point that's kind of odd to me, he says that the aunt doesn't really care about Abby. She's only in it for the checks, for caring for Abby. And this I don't really buy as a motivation for the aunt, because the aunt seems to be pretty well off already. She can afford a lawyer. She dresses nicely. The couple of times you see her in the movie, she looks pretty done up, and she seems affluent in comparison, whereas Mike is like defaulting on his rent. So I'm like, so she wants to take care of Abby for the money, but Mike's not seeming to make that much money out of it, so why does she care if she's already affluent? My best guess would be that Mike is getting, X amount of dollars, and he is putting all of that money towards making Abby happy and comfortable, and doesn't really have enough left over for himself, food, rent, and other necessities, probably because he's young and has had to take care of himself. Clearly the parents are out of the picture. Whereas the aunt would take Abby, give Abby like jack shit, and then spend the rest of the money on herself. That's maybe the exchange, but it just feels like too much work for the aunt for too little return. So it's not really a great motivation, but I don't really think there's much better motivation they could have given the aunt while keeping her as a character. Honestly, though, I don't think we needed the aunt as a character. She just wasn't really necessary to the story. I think just the threat of Abby being taken away by a social worker, or just the system in general, would have been enough and cut down on time. And there are definitely some parts of this movie that could have been cut, and I'll get into those in a bit more detail as we go. But he says that he also says to the doctor that his little sister is kind of oblivious. She doesn't seem to be mentally disabled by any extent, but there does seem to be some sort of social dysfunction to her. She seems like a happy enough kid, but she doesn't really seem to socialize, and her interactions with him as well have been kind of disjointed. And the aunt points that out as well, is that all she does is just sit and draw. And he tells the doctor, I could drop dead and Abby wouldn't even notice, she would just keep drawing. Now, the doctor gives her, if you've ever seen Silent Hill, she gives him the, the mother is God in the eyes of a child talk. In this movie, it's framed as pictures are everything to children. Pictures are how children communicate and perceive the world. And she points out that in all of the pictures that Abby draws, Mike is in all of them, and he is always in the center of those pictures. Therefore, Mike is the center of Abby's world, even if she doesn't show that or say it. So, I don't 100% know about that, but it's a very sweet concept. It's kind of shoehorned, but it is a sweet concept, and I do like the way that their relationship is presented in that regard. Clearly, he cares about her. Even though it's difficult, it's strenuous, you get that tired dad, he clearly does care about her. And I think that's acted well for the most part. I think Josh Hutcherson does play it a little flat. That's just me though. So from there, he does bring up his concerns that the aunt's kind of right. He doesn't have much money. He doesn't really have much standing. If the aunt were to take it to a court, the judge would probably award her custody over Abby as opposed to him. And the doctor points out, maybe if you had a job, that would give you better standing. So obviously Mike is going to take the job to work at Freddy Fazbear's. So he goes ahead and he calls the guy at the employment agency. So he goes ahead and calls the guy's like, the guy who can't work nights. He takes the job, obviously. And he's told that really all he has to do is watch the place, keep people out. That's it. Just keep people out. That's all you have to do. Keep an eye on the monitors and don't fall asleep. Remember, Mike, don't fall asleep. You have one job. So he goes to the restaurant, and the restaurant's in pretty good shape, honestly. I was expecting it to be like completely run down, but honestly, it just looks like a nice arcade restaurant that's been abandoned for a long time. Good condition. It clearly hasn't been looted before. So he goes through, heads to the security room, things boot up all right. You're also given that there's the power breaker in the back of the restaurant, which anytime things go on the fritz, just reset that and it resets the power in the restaurant. This sort of comes back a couple of times, but it's not a big thing on its own. But so he goes ahead and sets up in the security room. We get a Balloon Boy jump scare with this little Balloon Boy figurine, and there's a couple of these in the movie, and honestly, they are funny every time. Good on you movie. It's just a sudden jump scare. He opens a locker and boom, it's right there, and you get jump scared. The movie doesn't have a lot of jump scares, honestly, which I was shocked by. And the ones that it has like that are pretty funny, actually, or pretty good. So I give it that. That was a good jump scare. So he goes ahead and he explores, and you see the first real view of the animatronics behind a curtain. He is clearly not comfortable with them. So he goes back to the security office and immediately falls asleep. Great job, Mike. No wonder you keep jobs so well. So he starts having his dream again. The dream about the forest. Now, this time, it's a little bit different, and if I'm remembering the sequence of events correctly with the dream sequences, this is one spot where my memory is a little bit fuzzy, so if I'm off on the order, please forgive me, but if I remember correctly, he has the dream again. It goes through the whole thing, and it's like an exact replay. The mom there, the dad's there, they have the exact same lines, mom spills a soda or something like that, and it loops through the whole thing. But after the brother is taken, the dream keeps going, and he turns around, and there's all these little kids standing behind him. Obviously, we know the kids are the ghost kids that are attached to the robots, whatever. Now, the children actors in this movie are really good. And it might just be for these ones they were given one job, and it was be spooky. And by God were they. They were so good at being spooky children. They excelled at it. Great. 10 out of 10. I also love the little sister. She, what was her name? Piper Rubio. She did a fantastic job as Abby. I loved her. Didn't like her at the very beginning, but as the movie went on, she grew on me very quickly. And I'm not a big fan of children characters in movies. They tend to be a little bit irritating, but I really enjoyed her. So he turns around to see these kids standing in the field behind him, and immediately he just kind of accepts them as a part of the dream, and he's like, did you see that? Did you see that? Did you see who took my brother? And the kids run away. And he tries to chase after one of them, but he ends up falling and falls out of his chair in the real world and wakes up. And if I remember correctly, at that point, that is the end of the first night. Nothing else really happens, and he ends up going home. So he goes home. You see that Max is there again, babysitting. She spent the night, and they have a little bit of banter. He says, like, hey, I promise I'm going to pay you for all of this babysitting someday. And she's like, yeah, well, I know where you live. And it is generally good banter. It feels pretty real and sincere. some of the better dialogue in this movie, honestly, I think is in these like home moments where it feels like actual people talking. Now, after she leaves, and again, my order here might be a little bit off, but Mike goes ahead and he kind of goes to bed and things kind of go to normal. From there, we go to a diner. Not a Fazbear diner, a different diner. So we go to a diner, and the aunt is there. But who else is there with her but the best lawyer ever? Some dude, and Max. Max is a villain. Shock. So I was actually a little bit surprised by this. Also, I don't have great facial recognition, so I spent like the first 10 minutes just being like, is that Max? I think that's her. Is that the babysitter? I don't know. Maybe? Until she said something, and I was like, yes, no, that is her. So she, the aunt, has been trying to dig up dirt on Mike to try to basically win her case. She's trying to get Max to find some sort of proof of neglect, but Max has not been able to find any because Mike is, while struggling, a loving and caring brother, so she couldn't find or create any proof. The guy that's with them, who his actual relationship to Max is, I think, unstated, whether he's a brother, boyfriend, friend, whatever. But he's like, do you want us to just kill him for you? And she's like, good suggestion, but no. And the lawyer, I love him so much. He's just like, I should not be hearing this. I shouldn't be hearing this. And she's like, sit down, Greg. I love it. Great. Perfect humor. I love it so much. Imperfect humor. Matt Pat shows up. So, obviously we have our Matt Pat cameo. I didn't think it was a very good cameo. Nothing against Matt Pat. That's not his fault. It was very awkwardly shoved into the movie. He says something like, oh, you need breakfast. And she's like, we're not getting any food. He's like, oh, well, you need breakfast. It's just a theory. And then they brush him like, it was really awkward. It did not feel like a good shot scene. And when he said that it's just a theory, I groaned, and the sound of my friend slapping her forehead, just, you could have heard that across the theater. It was very funny. It was terrible. But again, no shade to him. It was not his fault. I just don't think that it was directed or shot very well. They could have done that better. Or just changed the line around a little bit. I think that it was probably rushed a little bit. But, so Matt has his scene and leaves. And instead, Max points out, she's like, well, he says he really needs this job. So why don't we get him fired from the job? And her friend that's with her suggests, he's like, well, he's a security guard, so let's go in, trash the place, nobody gets hurt, we just go in, wreck the place, take whatever we want, then he gets blamed for it for being a bad security guard and gets fired. Now, the point where this fails is, I'm like, well, you're going to go in there while Mike's not there, so you're going to go in while he's not on shift. I guess, whatever. We need to move the plot. So, the aunt agrees to it. She's like, yeah, I'll pay you for that, and then, keep whatever you want. Just do it. So, from there, the next night, Mike takes his poster from home. He has this little recording tape of terrible nature noises. Like, if you want nature noises that sound like screeching on a chalkboard to fall asleep to, call Mike. But he goes to sleep again so he can redo the dream. And this gets explained in more detail later. But so Mike goes back into the dream, falls asleep, and it's also shown that he's taking sleeping pills, prescription sleeping pills, to go to sleep every night. So he goes to sleep, goes back into the dream replays, sees the spooky kids again. And this time he chases after a different kid. This one is, I think the first time he chased the blonde kid and then fell, and then this time he chases the redheaded kid. To which anyone who knows don't f with Foxy is like, no, don't chase the redheaded kid. Don't chase the redheaded kid. So he chases the redheaded kid. And he catches the kid and turns them around to just try to like get them to talk to him. And they like screech at him, and they're like horror screech. It's just like black goo in their face. It's a horror movie. And then hook claws him. And Mike then wakes up to like somebody knocking on the doors outside, or the clawing wakes him up, one or the other. And there's a cop outside. There's a lady cop. Of course, my immediate reaction is it? It wouldn't be. And she pretty much immediately says, "My name is Officer Vanessa." And I cackled. Like, straight on cackled in the theater. It struck me so funny. I knew it. Just blonde, ponytailed police officer. It was Vanessa. So the second she says her name, I'm like, okay, any continuity sense with the games is just shot at this point. So Vanessa's here now. From 2050 or whenever security breach takes place, Vanessa's here now. So she points out that he's bleeding, and she's like, come on, I know where they keep the first aid kit, come on. So immediately we know that Vanessa knows things. She knows about the building and where things are, and she triages his wound, and she's like, that's a pretty bad wound, how'd you get that? And he's like, dreams, I guess, whatever. So Vanessa makes it very obvious that she knows the restaurant and kind of gives Mike a more detailed tour. She hits the showtime button, so we get to see the robots run for a little bit. But unfortunately, I think the Bonnie one, his guitar starts sparking, and then they shut down again. And that's where she drops the lore about the kids. So she explains the plot of Five Nights at Freddy's to Mike, about the kids that went missing there. And she clearly knows more than she's letting on. But we're not going there yet. So the two of them spend time together, and seem to strike up a little bit of a friendship. And then they head out together in the morning. And as they're leaving, of course, we see the thugs watching from a distance. Now, this broke my disbelief a little bit, because I don't think, even though they were leaving, seeing a police officer there, I think would spook most common thugs away. Like, even though they were leaving, they'd be like, oh, shit, there's a cop here. We should not be here. She could come back. But they're like, oh no, they're gone. Let's go wreck the place. So we get a daytime horror sequence, which not enough horror movies do. I really like daytime horror sequences in movies. I think they're underutilized. And Mike's dreams as well have been daytime horror, with the spooky kids. Cloudy, yeah, but still daytime. And I respect that in horror movies when they do that right. It's rare, and it's, much harder to do spooky during the day than it is at night. So you've got 3 thugs, and then the babysitter. You've got the guy that was with her at the diner, an older guy, and then a younger guy. So the 3 guys go in. Max stays in the truck. She's clearly not jazzed about this. She feels guilt. And it's very apparent that she's guilty about what they're doing to Mike and Abby. But she's still rolling with it. So the 3 guys go in, and they're like, yeah, we're going to trash the place. Everybody got that? And one of them is like, yeah, we're golden. And I'm like, couldn't resist, could you? Had to say it. Fair enough. So the 3 guys they split up and start wrecking the place. So we are then treated to one of the first little problems in some of the horror sequencing we get here. So The younger guy with the headphones is in the kitchens, and we all know who's in the kitchens, Chica. And he hears noises in the fridge. So he opens the fridge, and what's in there but the cupcake? The cupcake has way too much screen time in this movie, and I don't like it. Because the cupcake just isn't scary. Like, it's never featured much in the games, and it's better when it's just kind of like a little ha-ha jump scare on the side. But it has a lot of screen time in this movie comparatively, and I don't like it because it's so non-threatening. It's really kind of like, is the cupcake part of Chica? Is it another kid? Is it the same kid? Is it like being controlled by Chica's powers? I don't know, and I don't like it. So the cupcake's there, and then he turns around, and then Chica's there, and then Chica's eyes light up red, and so you know he's and then the cupcake chomps his face, and it's very silly. It's not scary, it's silly. So do they do daytime horror well? No. And this is where we kind of come back to the question of why don't critics like this movie? Is Five Nights at Freddy's a scary movie? No, it's really not. There are a couple of tense moments, but it's not a scary movie. There are no actively scary moments, besides maybe a couple. I'll come back to that. There are a couple moments that I would say have a little bit of spook factor to them, but it's so minimal. It's really not. It's got some tension, but no fear. So we see Chica. She's just there. There's no like build-up thread. They're moving. I wish they had tried a little bit to emulate the like from the first game where you don't see them move. Just a little bit. Like, yeah, you can't keep that up for long, obviously. Like in the VR game, where you see them move pretty much the whole time when you're replaying the first game in that. But I wish they'd at least attempted to duplicate it a little bit, where you just see them like in one place, and then in another place, and then another place, and then maybe then you see them move a little bit before you see them moving all the time. But they're just moving all the time, straight from the gate, which I don't think does it any favors. The older guy of the three thugs, he sees the younger guy getting mauled by the cupcake, and makes the executive decision to get the fuck out of there, which, good on him. Unfortunately, he does this instead of running out the front entrance, or the way they came in. He does this by going into the, like, back tunnels? I don't know. The layout of this restaurant is really ambiguous in this movie. So he goes running off into these tunnels and ends up locking himself in a room. Well, the guy that was in the diner, he goes into the security room, and he's about to smash the security monitors when he's stopped by seeing that guy running. He's like, why is he running? Where's he going? And sees him freaking out, and then he tries to talk to him over the loudspeaker system. But then we see Bonnie behind the bigger guy. And this, again, I can't really blame the movie for this. This is just the fault of the designs not being particularly threatening, and of the designs, I think Bonnie is the least threatening character, just personally. So Bonnie is behind him. So the guy can't get out, he's suddenly locked in, and you see Bonnie's eyes do the whoop thing as they light up red. So the dude tries to run down there to let him out, and Bonnie smashes this dude. You don't see it, but it happens. And you just see the guy's like arm leave like a bloody handprint on the window, and it's actually a good shot. That is one of the moments, not scary, but like good. It's a good shot. And that guy also makes the executive decision of GTFO, so he tries to book it. I think Foxy gets him. I don't remember for sure, because I think he does what the security guard at the beginning did, where he like runs up to a metal grate and then he can't get through it, and then Foxy gets him there. I don't remember exactly, but so that happens to them. And then Max is sitting back in the car and is like, well, look at my wrist. These guys haven't shown up yet. So she heads back into the restaurant and goes looking for the crew and can't find them. She sees the mess, but doesn't see the boys. So Max goes exploring, trying to find the guys, when creepy little kid is like, hey, over here. So she starts following Kid Ghost. Now, I've never known it to be that the ghost kids in Five Nights at Freddy's can just run around as ghost kids. I've never known that to be one of their capabilities, but they do in this movie a couple times. So Max goes following them, and she goes back into one of the workrooms, and I don't remember if she sees the dead bodies of the others. I don't think she does at any point. But she sees the Freddy, like the regular Freddy is in there. And she hears like, hey, in here, from the mouth of Freddy. So being dumb, she gets up close to the mouth and gets close to it. And you kind of expect her, like, her face to get chomped. We all know them, Bite of 87. And all the other ones that happen, apparently. And a hand grabs her face, yanks her into Freddy, who bites her in half. Straight in half, in the middle. Just like a guillotine. Just perfectly, just in half. And it's too far. It's too silly. Like, I can handle her getting crushed, but just straight up, just perfectly guillotined in half? Like, no, that's too silly. You stop that. So that just, it does not work. You feel a little bit bad for her, because, like, obviously she was not jiving with this, even if she's doing the wrong thing. Like, you can tell she's feeling remorse for it, but, like, oh boy, it is a silly, silly death. And then we're just done with that for now. Oh, I did forget one thing that does happen. While Vanessa is giving Mike the tour of the restaurant with her knowledge, she gives him from the toy counter a security badge, and she's like, yeah, now you're official. Like, you're just trying to get the robots to kill him now, aren't you? Like, he's already got the vest, now you're giving him a badge on top of it? Like, you're just drawing a target on this boy. But he takes the badge and vest home for some reason. And he tries to get Abby to take it, but she's a little bit pissy at him. So, because he wouldn't take her to the restaurant with him, he made her stay home. So he tries to give her the badge to be like, hey, I got you this. But she doesn't want it. So he puts it in a dresser, and he's like, fine, whatever. And then as soon as he leaves, she's like, kind of want it though. So she goes up to get it, and when she opens it, in there are the papers that the aunt gave him to give to sign Abby over to him. So he hears the clattering and runs out, and immediately Abby kind of assumes that he was going to do it, but he immediately tells her, like, hey, no, that's not the case. I wasn't going to do that. That's a misunderstanding. There's stuff going on I can't exactly explain, but that's not going to happen. And they both kind of have a bonding moment, because she says something like the aunt's a jerk or something like that, and he's like, we can both agree on that. And then she smiles. So that misunderstanding doesn't last for very long, which I appreciate. I hate plots that are driven by misunderstandings. It is a horrible trope. I am tired of it. It should not exist. So that, thankfully, does not continue. So we move on beyond that as Vanessa shows up at their house. I don't know how she got his name, like where he lives, but she's a cop, whatever. And there's a moment where Vanessa's like, oh, Mike didn't mention he had a daughter. And they do have like a great reaction of just both of them being like, ew, no, that's my sister. And I do like that. That felt genuine. Vanessa explains that the restaurant's been broken into. Doesn't mention any dead bodies, so doesn't apparently know about that. But she does say that the restaurant's been broken into, and Mike is gonna get in trouble. They both know that, because it technically... I don't know. See, this is my thing. So Vanessa was with Mike while he was on shift. I guess the argument that she has is that he didn't lock it, and so it's his fault. But she was with him that whole time. So if she's going to be writing a report, shouldn't she say, like, yeah, I stopped by the restaurant to check things out. The lights were on. You know, I was there for a while, and then we left together in the morning. And then when I came back on my rounds, the restaurant was broken into after he had left and I had left. So I don't quite understand why Mike would be the one held responsible for that when she was with him during that, if she's supposed to be a police officer. I kind of feel like Vanessa's not actually a cop. It's never actually said. It's not even implied that she's not actively, like, it's always implied that she is actually a police officer, but I get the feeling she's not. It's just weird. But she's basically like, yeah, you know, give me one good reason why I shouldn't write this report now and turn it in. So he goes on a walk with her and explains the situation, which, like, characters actually explaining shit to each other in movies instead of just letting them wonder for all eternity. So he explains what happened to his brother. And then we get the explanation of what he's actually been doing. And this was kind of puzzling me, and now we kind of get it in more detail. So the dreaming thing is something he's been doing intentionally. So apparently, every night he dreams about the kidnapping. He believes that as a child, he saw who took his brother. He saw the face of the man who took his brother, but he can't remember it because of the trauma. So, as we all know, the best thing with trauma is to just relive it over and over and over, and it gets magically better, right? That's how trauma works, right? Right? Somehow, Mike is able to just relive the dream by, like, hearing the nature sounds, the picture of the forest, and that's able to just, like, conjure up the memory, and the sleeping pills as well, like, make him dream more vividly. So he's just able to keep redoing that and try to pick up on details that he missed before. It's a dumb explanation. Dreams don't do that, really. Trauma doesn't quite do that. I mean, it's different for everybody, I know, but, like, it's a movie. It's a movie. Let's just accept it and move on. That's how he works. That's how Mike's dreams work. It's the magical FNAF universe. There are ghost robots here. Mike's dreams do that. Let's keep it. So Vanessa is very sympathetic. And she's like, okay, you know, I get your plight. You know, you're going through a lot. I understand now you're trying to keep custody of your sister. He doesn't really explain that as much, but I think he kind of explains a little bit more of that off screen. But she's sympathetic about that. And then she's like, all right, you know, I'm not going to file the report. I'm just going to let it go. It happened, but you need to stop doing this dreaming thing. You need to stay awake in the restaurant. You need to have your wits about you. And then she chucks his pills into the river. And I'm just like, Vanessa, no, those are prescription sleeping pills. Yes, he's taking them for a, like, technically non-medical reason, but he might actually have a medical reason too. He might actually have regular insomnia on top of his normal reasons for this. And he's been doing this for a long time. Those are addictive. Do you know the withdrawals that you can get from prescription sleeping pills? So Julia looked these up, and I'm going to pull these up as well, just from addictioncenter.com, just to read off a little bit of one of their articles here. Sleeping pill withdrawal symptoms can be intense, although they will vary from individual to individual, based on a number of factors such as the severity and length of the addiction. Clearly, Mike has been using these for quite a long time. Some symptoms can even be life-threatening if not treated by a medical professional. During medical detox, doctors monitor the person in withdrawal to check vital signs and address any potential health concerns that may arise. Typical sleeping pill withdrawal symptoms include difficulty sleeping, restlessness, anxiety, shivering, and circulation problems. Let's see, where there was more here. Common sleeping pill withdrawal symptoms include body spasms, seizures, insomnia, delirium, anxiety, cravings, irritability, depression, confusion, hallucinations, sweating, increased heart rate, hand tremors, nausea, or vomiting. So, Vanessa, I understand what you're doing. Don't do that. Just as a PSA, if you're ever in a situation where you find out somebody is abusing any sort of prescription ever, don't chuck the pills in the river. Consult a medical professional. You could kill that person. Don't do it. So, for my Vanessa no moment. So, Mike has to go back to work the next night. But he's not able to get a hold of Max, because Max has been chomped in half. So, he has no choice but to take Abby with him. And Abby is delighted. She is so excited to go to this restaurant for some reason. I think she's just happy to be with me. They go to the restaurant together, and he's like, stay in the office, stay safe. He's doing the regular big brother thing, trying to keep her safe. And she's pretty cooperative. And this is one thing I like about Abby. She is not your, like, regular little shit child character running around and just screwing everything up. She's actually, like, she pretty much follows his rules, and she's generally smart about things. She doesn't do a lot throughout the course of the movie, but she doesn't just do anything stupid, like blatantly dumb child things. Like she doesn't make the best choices all the time, but it's not like that little shit child thing that some kid characters do. So I like that about her. I like Abby. So they go ahead, and it's very endearing. In their house, she sleeps in a blanket fort instead of her bed, and in the security room, he builds her a little blanket fort for her to sleep in, and that's very cute. That's a very genuine little thing. I love that about them. After he kind of puts her down to go to sleep, he goes around the restaurant and starts cleaning things up, and the robots watch him while he cleans with interest, not necessarily malice. Unfortunately, he still wants to do the dreaming. In spite of Vanessa's warnings, he goes ahead and goes to sleep again. He puts his headphones on and still manages to go to sleep. He starts to have the dream again, and, you got the ghost kids again. While he's doing that, Abby wakes up to, ghost whispers being like, Abby! Usual spooky stuff. So she wakes up, and she doesn't really decide to just, like, go exploring, per se, but she goes off to use the bathroom. And then, after that, I don't think she's actively like, tee-hee, I'm gonna go explore the restaurant, but Mike does wake up to her screaming. So he rushes out and finds her surrounded by the robots and goes to attack them with a chair, and Freddy turns around with his eyes all red and scary. But it turns out they were just tickling Abby. So this is where it gets a little weird. The movie really kind of tries to delve into what if the robots aren't bad, though, in spite of the fact that we've just seen them kill multiple people. What if they're not bad? And what if they're actually, like, pretty innocent overall? Because, like, as soon as Abby is like, oh, Mike, and runs over him and is happy, like, Freddy's eyes, like, power down and they stop being malicious. And, you know, that always kind of has been a thing in the you know, the Five Nights universe, is that the robots are aggressive towards adults, not children, because they were murdered. You know, by adults, obviously. Mike is not pleased with this revelation that the robots are down from their stage and playing with his sister, and he does not know how to handle it. It is a very realistic reaction. And Abby is just gung-ho on this. She is into it. She is having a great time. She's like, oh yeah, these are my friends. This one's, and then she names them because, you know, there might be people in the audience that don't know their names. She's like, this is Freddy, this is Chica, this is Bonnie, and this is Foxy. So we get to see them all in the light. And the models do look really good. I really like how the animatronics look in this movie. But the problem is they look a little too nice, which detracts from the horror element a little further. They're a little bit too nice. You kind of get the impression is this is more what they would have looked like while they were in service. They're cleaner, they look more respectable. You get the impression that this is something a kid might have found fun and played with. Unfortunately, it has tonal issues because of that. So she's very like, oh yeah, no, these are my friends, they're great and stuff. And Mike is like, hate that. Not a fan, but don't know how to handle it either. And Abby like draws a little heart on a piece of paper, and this is actually really cute. She draws a little heart on a piece of paper and gives it to Bonnie. And just like puts it in his hand. It's just like, they like pictures. This comes back. So Mike is like, okay, let's leave now, please. So the two of them head out because that's not great for them. They go home, and you get one of the best scenes in a movie like this I have ever seen. I love this scene so much because Mike has by this point figured out that the kids are ghosts. So Vanessa explained the plot to him about the kids and everything. And so he understands the kids were kidnapped and murdered in the restaurant. And he has put two and two together because he is a smart enough character that the kids that he is seeing in his dreams are the kids that die. They are the ghost kids, and that's why they're suddenly just showing up now in the restaurant. That's why he's suddenly having these dreams happening. And this is why he's so intent on dreaming in the restaurant, is because of these ghost kids. And he's made that connection, which, good for him. That's some smart character thinking. Not something you see that often. So the next morning, they're having breakfast, and he's like, so, yeah, we had a brother, right? I was like, yeah, mom and dad didn't really talk about him. And he's like, yeah. He you know, kind of got kidnapped and died. And he's like, so your friends, are they... She's like, ghosts? Yeah, how else do you think they could move the giant robots? And he's just like, oh, okay. It is so funny. I love that scene so much because she's just like, obviously they're ghosts. Duh. And it paints a different picture of the scene from the night before, because Abby knows that she's not just playing with giant robots for no reason. She's smart enough that she would probably be afraid of them if they were just giant robots, but she knows that they're ghosts because Abby can see ghosts. So, starting to come to terms with the fact that his little sister can see ghosts, Mike asks her if the next time she interacts with her friends, if she could ask the ghosts about their brother. And she's like, maybe I can try. Like, the communication isn't that great between us, but like, I can try. And he's like, cool, yeah, I appreciate it. If you could at least try, you know, do your best and see what you can find out from them. She's like, no, I'll do that. So again, it's a very realistic exchange between them, and I enjoy that. They go back the next night, and this time Vanessa shows up for some reason. And Vanessa's just cool with this. And Mike is like, why are you cool with this? Did you know about this, about these giant robots being possessed? And Vanessa's like, kinda. And Mike's like, what are you not telling me? Stop being enigmatic. Vanessa's like, no, I will continue that, thank you very much. And then we are treated to what is the most useless scene in the movie, which is the play scene. And they decide to play with the robots. And Abby, she's like, my friends want to build a giant pillow fort, or whatever. And so we get this long scene of the characters putting together tables to make like a table fort. And then all of them are like lying together under the table fort and then being like, it needs a roof. I'm like, what kind of kid doesn't put that, like, obviously I'm, you know, as a kid, that's one of the first things I did before I even put in up any structure is, you know, put the blanket on first and then build up underneath it. It's just such a long scene. And it doesn't really do much besides establishing the, like, it doesn't even establish it, it just kind of enhances the friendship between Abby and the animatronics, and a little bit Mike in the animatronics, but the problem is that never comes back. Like, the friendship and the relationship that Mike has with the animatronics never comes back. Only Abby. So, it doesn't do anything, and it goes on for a very long time. Now, the problem is, it's very endearing. It is a good scene, self-contained. I really like it as a scene. It's very cute, because I love the animatronics. I love them being, like, cute, and, like, because they're not scary to me. They never will really be. There's some, like the withered ones or whatever, the nightmare animatronics, those are scary, but the regular ones aren't. But it really sucks the horror out of the movie, just gone. Like, there is no tension, there is no sense of urgency or build-up. It is just, we are just playing with these animatronics at this point. We have gone full kids movie for just this chunk. Like, forget the people that were, like, getting chomped in half earlier, like, we're just playing now. And it's so whimsical and carefree, and, like, it's so much fun. I love the scene, and, like Bonnie, like, falls over backwards, and they're like, oh no, and thumbs up, and it's so cute. It's a cute scene. And I love it. I love that it is so cute, and it's so pointless. It just wastes time in the movie. And it's a little frustrating because of that. I wish they had... I don't think that it should be cut, is the thing. Like, I don't think it should necessarily be cut, but I think that it should do something, that it should be used to accomplish something. What does accomplish something from there is that Mike and Vanessa wander off to find a tablecloth to be a roof for their fort. And again, we're presented with the fact that Vanessa knows way too much about the restaurant and where things are in the restaurant. And Mike calls her out on it, and she's like, I'm not answering that. And we see briefly the puppet animatronic. And it looks awful. I don't know why they designed the puppet animatronic the way they did in this movie. It looks so stupid. And it looks nothing like the puppet from the games. Like, they changed it substantially, and it's just so silly. And Mike goes to touch it, and Vanessa's like, oh, no, don't touch it. And we're introduced to the concept of the spring locks. But the spring locks are kind of clarified here that they're more like these bars, like here, like kind of like ribs that stretch out. And then, like, if you touch them, they like bear trap in. And it's just, it doesn't quite work. From like a thought level of, okay, why are they like this though? It doesn't quite fit, especially with what happens later. So she just like pokes it with a broom and then just snaps and chomps off the broom, and she's like, And Mike gets mad at her. He's like, why are you being so secretive? Why do you know so much? And you're being so secretive is actively causing danger. What if, because of you not telling us these things and just like dribbling us information, what if Abby had come back here and if she had touched this thing and gotten injured? Which, fair point. That is the problem with these enigmatic bullshit characters, is they're endangering everyone around them. Every single one of them. Look at Dumbledore. Look at all these other Gandalf and all these people who just can't stop being enigmatic for 5 minutes. But so they go out, and unfortunately, Abby is playing with the animatronics still, and she goes to strum Bonnie's guitar. And previously, when Vanessa ran the Showtime button before, we saw the guitars what short-circuited and caused them to shut down, and unfortunately they don't stop her in time, and she gets zapped. But she's okay, but she gets knocked out and then, regains consciousness. But Vanessa is freaked out by this for some reason. And even with the information we get about her later, this part isn't really clear. I don't know why this freaks her out as much as it does. But something about Abby getting, like, zapped by this just freaks her out just over the top, and she's like, get her out of here. Never bring her back here. If you bring Abby back to this restaurant, I will shoot you. And I'm like, well, I guess she is a cop. So Mike goes ahead and he takes her home, and he clearly feels bad about what happened. So from there, he's like, okay, I've got to finish this. I need to continue what I'm doing. And so he calls somebody and is like, hey, I need your help. Because he looks at Abby sleeping and is like, hey, I need your help. So Abby wakes up, and when she comes out, the ant is there. Now, this is one point where my interpretation differed from Julia, the person who watched the movie with me, my friend. When I saw this scene, I was kind of under the impression that Mike was starting to be like, yeah, maybe this isn't good. I think Abby should potentially go and stay with Aunt Jane, and I can't really take care of her. I can't keep her safe. Julia saw it as just, hey, I need you to be a babysitter for me overnight. Because Aunt Jane does say something as he's leaving, like, hey, we're going to have a longer discussion about this later. So I see where she's coming from. I was more under the impression that he was actually like, okay, we're going to start this process. But Abby, of course, sees the ant, realizes she's been betrayed, freaks out, runs back into her room and scratches Mike's face off of all of her drawings and is very upset. I don't feel like this is misunderstanding driven either way, so I'm not mad about it, because either way he did he brought the ant into it that they both hate, and yeah, fair. She sucks. She's very caring energy. Mike goes ahead and he heads out and heads back to the restaurant again, because he's still going to try to solve this. So he goes to the pharmacy, picks up more of the sleeping pills, and then goes back. Now, the scene in the pharmacy is odd. He has a brief conversation with the pharmacist there, and it's just this short interaction of, hey, maybe you should try chamomile tea or something like that. It's really not, no purpose to this conversation. Both of us agree that most likely this scene was written to be a cameo. But from what we can tell, the actor in the scene wasn't like a cameo of anyone from the fandom. It's just a normal actor. So more likely than not, this scene was written to potentially be a cameo for somebody from, YouTube or somebody else in the fandom, but it just didn't come to be. So the scene's just still kind of there, and they didn't change it because it has just this focus and kind of gravitas, and there's just a little too much focus on the pharmacist and his lines, the way it's shot, the way it's like acted. All of it is a little bit too like, okay, why are we focusing on this guy? He doesn't matter. He's an NPC. Go away. So probably it was meant to be a cameo that just didn't end up happening. Anyway, Mike goes back to the restaurant, and then he puts himself back to sleep. And now this is where my memory of events is a little fuzzy on the order. So again, a little fuzzy here. So forgive me if I'm a bit out of sequence. But so Mike takes the sleeping pills, and then when he kind of wakes up into the dream or enters the dream, instead of the normal scene, his parents are just there with his brother. Instead of the brother like running around like he was doing, he's just sitting there at the table. And he's like, this isn't my normal dream. Something is amiss here. And the kids are there. And this is where things go a little awry. So the other kids are there, including the blonde child. So the children in the movie, there are, of course, one for each of the animatronics, plus one. Now, those of us who know the lore and everything like that, we know the plus one is Golden Freddy. In this case, instead of being Cassidy Williams, who, as far as I believe we know in the games, was a girl, in this it's a little boy with blonde hair, very Children of the Corn energy to him. He did interact briefly with this kid once before, but he's like, what's going on here? Or something this. And he's like, hey, you said you want something, right? And he's like, I want to find out like what happened to my brother, like that's what I want. He's like, is it though? Like, I don't think you want, like, that's not what this is about. You want to fix it. You want this. He's like, we could give you this dream every night forever. You could come back here every time you go to sleep. You could come back here to this forest with your mom and your dad, and they're alive again, and your brother's here. You're all together again forever. You can have this every single night, but you got to give us something. What are you going to give us for it? And he says, anything. I'll give you anything. And the little boy's like, we want Abby. And Mike, being very much entrapped by this idea of his brother and rescuing his brother, and this has been his quest for so long, agrees. He's like, sure, yeah. And immediately realized he f***ed up. Instantly, he's like, wait, no, this isn't right. I screwed up. But when he turns around, they're gone. And he's like, oh, I f***ed it. I have made a mistake. I have errored. But it's too late. Sort of. So, he did earlier ask them, I think this is where my memory is a little bit out of sequence. I think in the last stream, he asked them, I need you to help me find out who took my brother. What do you give us? Anything. And then now in this stream, we can give you this instead. What do you want? We want Abby. I think that might actually be the sequence instead. I might be misremembering this slightly. So I think previous stream is when they were like, what'll you give us? What will you give us in return? Anything. And then now they're like, okay, we want Abby. And then he agrees. Instant regret. It happens. Make mistakes. Little things. So Mike immediately realizes the mistake, tries to stop it, does not go over well. The ghost kids start like attacking him in the dream and like scratching them up. And so he's like, no, I take it back. No, you can't have her. And he gets mad and he's like, no, you can't have her. And then the ghost kids start like attacking him, and they do like drive by, like run past him and like clawing at him. And then when he wakes up, he's in the chair from the beginning of the movie with the Freddy head with the spinning saw blades in it for some reason. It's dumb. So he's there, and so he's in the same position the security guard was, but he's like, so he's trying to fight with the thing holding his hand down, and the previous security guard loosened it. So thanks, Jeremy. And he gets it undone and is able to get out at the last second, of course. And then, if I remember correctly, so he runs away, and then I think gets caught by Foxy or something, and he gets knocked out again. So he's unconscious. He's unconscious for the moment. So we cut back to Abby, who's still in her room. She's very upset, and the aunt is outside, and she's like, "You're gonna have to come out eventually." Okay, I guess. And so she sits down to watch TV, and then behind her you see Freddy in background. Now this is supposed to be Golden Freddy, apparently, and I don't know whether this was just because of the theater that we were in. I just wasn't expecting it, or it's actually not shot that well, but the colors aren't that vivid in this movie. And I just thought it was regular Freddy. It just didn't click in my head, missing ear. Like, I noticed it, but I didn't associate it because he just looked brown. He didn't look golden. And usually Golden Freddy is pretty distinctively gold or yellow in the games. He just looked like Freddy. But he's there, standing behind her, and like, woo! And everyone in the theater was like, woo! At once. It was kind of funny. So Abby hears a thump outside, and so she comes out of her room, and you see him standing there, and she's like, Freddy? And the exchange here is interesting, because he's like, no. And it's the little blonde boy. He steps forward. I guess that's another implication that it's Golden Freddy, not just Freddy, specifically. And he's like, hey, you should come back to the restaurant with us. You should come play. It's cool. Things are rough. You come back. And she's like, okay, I guess. And then she looks over, and you just see the ant's legs. And she's like, silly Aunt Jane. She fell down. I'm like, she's dead. She's dead. Killed her. Okay. And Abby's just like, I don't think she's distressed by this. Even if she knows, she's like, fair enough. She just leaves. So this scene was apparently in the trailer, and I procrastinated on watching the trailer just forever because of who I am as a person. And I never actually ended up seeing the trailer, but apparently this was in one of the trailers. This is where we get our cameo with Corey X Kenshin, and I was delighted to see him. I hadn't thought about him when I was thinking about, okay, what cameos might be in this movie. So the second it cuts to the inside of this taxi cab, I'm like, I was very happy. Like, I don't watch a lot of his stuff, but I was still just very happy to see that he got into this movie. It was like, yes, he deserves this. He's the taxi driver. And so they get into the back, and that's where he gives his, like, oh, why do I always see the weirdos? Like, it's not the weirdest thing this cab driver has seen, and I love that. They take off back to the restaurant. So we go back to Mike, and Mike wakes up, and he's at, like, a police bunker, I guess. And Vanessa's there, and she's rescued him or something. And he's bandaged up again. He immediately is like, I need to go back. I have made mistakes. He explains to Vanessa what he did. He's pretty forthcoming about it. Like, they offered me my brother, and they asked me for Abby. I said yes. I realized I made a mistake, but I couldn't fix it. And Vanessa is just like, jeez. Not a great idea. Okay, this is a problem. Then Vanessa explains William Afton, who is finally named as William Afton. And now we get the bombshell of he was her father. Okay. So we've done some switching here. So instead of Michael Afton potentially being Mike Schmidt, being William Afton's child, in this, Vanessa, who should not be alive for another, 70 years, is his daughter. Maybe not 70, 30, 50, something. And she's aware of everything that he did, and that he was the killer, and that he was in the Spring Bonnie suit. And she doesn't really explain what happened to him either. So she drops that bombshell and explains that he has some sort of an influence over the kids. And this is fuzzy at best. It's really not clear where William's alleged influence over the kids ends and where them just being spooky children begins. Because, keep in mind, throughout this, the children have killed a lot of people. At the very least, in this movie, we have seen them kill 4 or 5 people. And now they want to kill Abby. Yes, that is the thing that Vanessa points out. She's like, oh, when they say they want Abby, they want to make her like them. This seems to be independent of William Afton's influence. They like her, so they want her to die and be an animatronic like them. Kids are sociopaths. So they are, shredding Mike. They're just spooky in general. They're bartering for a child's soul, another kid's soul. They're literally like, oh yeah, no, we're willing to kill another child so she can play with us forever. That's fine. How much of this are we putting on William Afton? Is this all because of his influence on them? Because I kind of just get the impression from this and the events later on that William's influence on them is more just that he kind of has a little bit of in-the-moment control of them, and they're not aware of that he was the one that killed them. And because they're not aware that he was the one that killed them, he can kind of influence them in that regard. But this seems to be just kind of their choice. They just want Abby. These kids are kind of a little bit evil. Maybe William Afton was right. Maybe he was trying to protect people by killing these evil children. These are some children of the corn kids. They're spooky children. And I don't know. The movie... I don't think that's the movie's intent by any point. It's not trying to frame these children as being evil. But that's just how it comes across, is that they're evil and he's just not really helping the issue. So William Afton is the unsung hero of Five Nights at Freddy's, trying to protect the world from these awful, awful ghost kids. I tried to take him down in advance, but unfortunately they just they just keep coming back. They always come back. So Mike is like, yeah, I gotta go save Abby from the kids who want to kill her. Because they're scary, bad children. And he's like, you should come with me. You should help me try to save her. And Vanessa's like, no, I cannot. Nope, I will not be coming with you. Because if my father shows up, I will be of no use to you. And it's not stated, but it is implied that she is badly traumatized by his actions. Now, the extent of this, what he did exactly, or how, it's not gotten into, probably for the better, honestly, but it's just implied that throughout him murdering these other kids, it's traumatized her. That's fine. We don't need to get into it. So Mike understands. He's like, oh, okay. And so she arms him with, like, a couple of tasers, like a cattle prod and a taser, to fight the animatronics. So she's like, it won't, like, destroy them, but it will mess with the animatronics' circuitry and shut them down. Which, I guess, makes sense, sort of. I mean, they're being piloted by ghosts, so it's debatable how much they would need the circuitry itself to be working, but I guess whatever. In universe logic. So, she gears him up and he takes off to go save Abby. Meanwhile, Abby has shown up at the restaurant with Golden Freddy outside. And she heads in, but when she looks back, Golden Freddy has disappeared. We will not be seeing Golden Freddy again during the movie. We will see the kid, I'll just keep calling the blonde kid Cassidy, because that's really who he's playing. He is playing Cassidy, just a male version of Cassidy Williams. And as much as I prefer, like, Cassidy just being this psycho girl boss, like, torturing William Afton's soul for all eternity, like, I love her for that. Good on you, girl. But in this one, I'm fine with him just being a spooky child. He does great. The actor that plays Cassidy in this, he is fantastic. He did a great job. Grant Feely. He did a great job. He's just this blonde child on IMDb, but he did a great. He did great. He was very spooky. His line deliveries were good. Again, the child actors in this movie, I think, are honestly better than the adult actors. They sold it really well. They're spooky children. They were given one job, be spooky, and they nailed it. So Vanessa gives Mike the instruction of don't go in through the front door for some reason, go in through a vent. So he vents, which is very sus of him to do, but he does, and he tries to save Abby that way, but Chica is already leading her into the back, where they are going to put her in the puppet with the spring locks to murder her. Which, again, these kids are just full of murder. Like, why? Why are they so full of murder? Why are they like this? Is this Williams doing? Are they just like this? So Abby's finally like, oh no, that's not good. Oh. So Mike tases Freddy and Bonnie on stage to get into the back, and tases Chica to try to rescue Abby. They get attacked by the cupcake. And again, the cupcake is just, it's too much screen time. The cupcake does not need to be on screen this long. But he's like fighting it off, and it's just silly. It's just a grown man fighting a cupcake, and it just looks so stupid. And it's supposed to be tense, and it's not. But he like sends Abby ahead, and he's like, oh, go, I'll be behind you. So Abby runs on ahead. And we are treated to what is, in my personal opinion, the best shot in the movie. It is a very simple shot, but it's so good. So Abby is like running out, and she runs past the stage. And you see the little kid that plays Foxy standing there watching her as she runs past. And then the little kid steps back on the stage into the darkness. And then the Foxy animatronic steps forward. And it's just really good. It's just such a good shot. It's so simple. There's not even like a special effect there. It's just kid steps back, thing steps forward where kid was. So simple, but like very effective. I love how they did that. So Mike is fighting off the cupcake still. And meanwhile, Abby is being pursued by Foxy now. Then Abby hides in a ball pit. And Foxy kind of knows that she's there and is looking for her. But at the last second, Foxy gets tased by Vanessa, who has shown up to rescue her and save the day. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Mike manages to tase the cupcake. What a sentence. And starts limping his way towards Abby to try to rescue her. When who finally rears his ugly, fuzzy head but William Afton as Springtrap. Yes, in this one, he is still alive, apparently. So he's in the Spring Bonnie suit, and they do a good job when he's in the suit of making him look huge. Like, he looks huge and menacing, and he just kicks the shit out of Mike. Like, this kid's already pretty beat up. Like, it's not a very fair fight to begin with, but like, he just kicks the shit out of him, and he's got a knife. So in this one, he's threatening. Like, he comes off as threatening. So the other animatronics start waking up, and then we get the big reveal. William Afton takes off the Springtrap head, or Spring Bonnie, whatever you want to call it. He takes it off, and it is revealed that it is Shaggy. Shaggy Y. It's the guy from the employment center. And just the story sense, it's fine. I have no problem in a story sense. But the problem is Matthew Lillard, or Lillard, however it's said, is not threatening. He's just such a non-threatening individual. His acting is very over the top, which fits. It fits the scene and it fits the role. I have no problems with that. The way he acts, William Afton, is fine. But he's just got such a, like, non-threatening, friendly dude vibe. Like, I buy him as, like, I buy him as a social worker. I don't buy him as a child serial killer. Like, he's just got such just a dude energy. I don't buy him as, like, this suave businessman genius who created these animatronics, kidnapped all these children. It doesn't fit. It doesn't work. And, like, so he boots Mike across the floor. Abby runs to try to wake Mike up, while Vanessa tries to hold him off, and she shoots him. Good on her for that. Doesn't do anything, but she does, because it's not time yet for it to do anything. But she shoots him, and she does get shanked. Unfortunately, stabs her right in the stomach, which is very, very unkind thing to do. We don't buy the relationship between them either. The actress that plays Vanessa doesn't give enough of that dilemma. Like, she's pretty gung-ho on the fight. And I don't really buy so much that she's like having to make this deep choice, or really like fighting her fears to do this quite so much. And I don't want to give her a hard time for it, but it's just not a super strong moment for her. When she gets stabbed, her acting is very good. I very much like, it's very emotional for her, and like the way that she plays it is very good. There is actually a very funny little quip between them. I'll leave that one for you guys when you actually watch the movie. That's a callback to a joke from earlier in the movie. Very funny the way that it comes back here, so love it. It's actually very well done, but before she gets stabbed. But so she goes down. So William has made it clear that the robots are on his side, because they've all come back, and he's like, you know, they know their friend, they're on my side. And he says to Vanessa, unlike you, they know where their loyalties lie, or something stupid like that. So Mike sees this picture board, which we've seen several times throughout the movie, and in the middle of it is a child's drawing of the golden rabbit with the kids on either side of him, holding hands, they're besties. Again, it kind of poses the question of how much control does William have over them? Is he actually able to make them do things they don't want to do? Or are they just convinced that he is their friend? Where's the line? And also, ultimate question, how does he know this? How does he know the child's drawing binds them? How is he able to do that? Did he draw it? Did Vanessa draw it, maybe, as a kid? And the child's drawing is it's kind of a weird plot device, but we've had enough callbacks to it that it's relevant. It's not like it's out of nowhere, but it's not. That specific drawing needs a little more explanation. I'd like to know where it came, who drew it. Why does William Afton know that he can use it to control the animatronics? Mike is show them. You have to show them the truth. So he takes off and turns off all of the lights. And when he turns them back on, there's a spotlight on the board for some reason. There wasn't a spotlight there before when the lights came on, as far as I remember. But there is now. So there's a spotlight on the board and a spotlight on William Afton. It's the end of the movie. We need dramatic lighting, even if it makes no sense. So Abby rips off the picture and then slams her own one up there and nails it to the board somehow. And instead of that, it's the picture of the golden rabbit with a knife covered in blood and the kids dead around him. And that breaks the spell. And all of a sudden, all the kids remember that it was him that killed them. And honestly, that's really good. It's a good moment. Makes no sense in terms of where the original picture came from, but that part established, that question and nonsensicalness out of the way, that established, this part is good. This makes sense, it is good. The swap makes sense, it is good. Moving forward from that point, it is good. And Abby actually drops a line from Security Brace. She looks at him and she's like, now they can see you. Doesn't quite make sense, they could see him before, but now they can see you for what you are, is what makes sense. So, still a badass line. The delivery is fantastic. Great job to that actress. She nailed that line so good, as well as she nailed that picture. So, all of the animatronics turn on him, and the actor's a little too over the top at this point, because he's like, you all are nothing at all. And then the cupcake, Chica sends the cupcake and it chomps him and rips out a chunk of the suit just so we can see inside to see what's happening, because people aren't smart enough to know what's happening if we can't see it. And for some reason, this is what sets off the spring locks in this suit that he's apparently been using for decades, unhindered, without any problem. The whole spring lock thing doesn't work in this. It doesn't. I like it in the original, but it does not work in this. So, obviously, this is where the spring locks start going off, and they just start ting, ting into him. And just the reaction is so bad. He doesn't freak out. He's not, fighting it or anything. Like, he just kind of stands there going like, at them. It's really not good. And it goes on for so long. And, like, a proper human reaction would be to be like trying to stop it or something. But instead he's just like standing there like growling at them as they surround him, like surrounding him, watching this happen. It's just, it comes off more silly. Like, it comes off more silly than climactic, and I just can't really appreciate the moment. It's not built up to, it's not really earned. It's the cupcake that does it. It's not just like the spring locks malfunctioning. And then like as he's going down, he puts the head back on at that moment instead. Whereas like in the original one, you kind of get the impression more that he sees the ghosts, and then he freaks out and he's running from the ghosts, and then he gets in the suit then, and then he's like, ah ha ha, now I'm in the suit, now I'm big and scary, and then the spring locks malfunction and kill him. In this, it's like, they kind of go off, and then he puts the head off, and then he's like, I always come back. It's really chunky, and it goes on for so long. And then the building just starts falling apart, for some reason, because the movie's over. So the building starts falling apart because we have to have that happen, and Mike, you know, he might be up, but Abby helps him get up, and then the two of them get up, and the animatronics are like, they kind of glance at them, and they're like, we got our guy, we're busy. So like Foxy like hooks him, and they just start like dragging him to the back, and that part's cool. I like them like slowly dragging him away. That looks really good. It fits the music, the tone is good. It's just, like, everything before that, it's just too goony. It doesn't work, but them dragging him away is great visual. And surprisingly, they don't just leave Vanessa for dead at that point, because like usually in a movie, like, you know, even though it wouldn't be, getting stabbed in the gut is usually just fatal and that person's dead. But they go to Vanessa and they manage to pick her up, because that's great for internal bleeding, and then they drag her out. So the three of them escape the restaurant as it's collapsing behind them, because the movie's ending, and then it's just over. So we cut forward to the future at this point. We're at the school again with the doctor lady, and the doctor's lady is like, it's amazing how much of an improvement she's made, like talking about Abby, and Abby's out there and she's like happy and she's still drawing, but she's like talking with the other kids, and just my mind just automatically completed the line in her head before she continued. Just, it's amazing how much your sister's improved since your aunt that you were having a custody battle with was found dead under mysterious circumstances in your home. It's not brought up at all. And like, one of my other friends who saw the movie before I did, I messaged them after I saw it, and one of the very first things they said was, so we can agree the aunt is dead, right? Like, she died, right? And I'm like, she just died in their house, and everyone was like, guess that happened. You can keep your sister. It's so funny. It's just like, yeah, she died. It's fine. Nobody cares. But, it's very funny. And then, like, they have a little dinner scene, and Abby's like, hey, I want to go back, and Mike's like, maybe, if we gotta. And then we, like, cut back to the restaurant, so time is kind of a little wibbity here. But we cut back to the restaurant, and it's the back of the restaurant, and William Afton's, like, you know, dying slowly and reaching out, and you just see the door with Cassidy standing there in his, like, child form, and just, like, staring like, you motherfucker. as the door just like slowly closes and Afton dies. And it's a good shot. It's a good scene, but I'm like, why did this come after the other bit? This should have been before. We're hopping around chronologically where we haven't really done that much before, and it doesn't really work, but whatever. Movie's ending, we are shotgunning this happy ending. We don't have time to explain anything. We don't have time to explain the end. We have a happy ending to get through, and we're going. So it ends. Movie's over. Credits start. We get a little, like, silly end credits scene, another one with chordic tension. Very funny, actually. I very much enjoyed that little end credits scene. It was very cute. And that's how it ends. So, my final thoughts on the movie. All in all, was it a good movie? No. Was it a fun movie? Yes. I enjoyed the movie quite a bit. A little bit more than my friend did, but I'm also a nerd for the series, whereas she's not. But she said she also didn't have a bad time. I just really had a good time. I understand where people might not like it, especially critics. As a standalone movie, not a very good standalone movie. The plot is clumsy. The pacing is terrible. Like, it is either moving at 100 miles an hour or just like we're making cable forts. Like, people are either getting their heads caved in and getting chomped in half, or we're like tipping over backwards and like playful robot thumbs up. Like, such terrible pacing and tone issues. And this is also what happened with Security Breach, was it could not decide on a tone, and it just ended up being messy and stuff. And again, Security Breach is my favorite, so I'm just putting that out. So it's got problems, but it's a very fun movie. You can tell the people that were in it generally had a fun time. I did think that Josh Hutcherson was a little bit stiff. I don't think he necessarily did a terribly good performance overall. It was really like the quiet moments with Abby in particular that I really felt like he excelled. The bigger moments, I don't think he sold very well. Vanessa, overall, she was fine. Like, I bought her fear of Afton. Really, through the rest of it, I bought her, except for like when she encountered him and shot him. It just didn't really feel very realistic there. And then afterwards, she was fine. And we do get that in the end credits. Or before the end credits, they go and visit her in the hospital, and so she's alive, but like in a coma or whatever. So we can bring her back for the next movie. In terms of the writing, trying to compare it to the games is, I think, a little unfair. They are very different creatures, and there's always going to be difficulty translating between mediums, especially video game to movie is either a very easy transition, depending on the game, or a very difficult transition. And I think the Five Nights at Freddy's story could be adapted a lot better, but it's gonna depend on where you're focusing. And I think with this, they chose to make a movie that was broader and would appeal to a broader audience rather than just something that would appeal to the fans. Now, unfortunately, the price that we paid for it is some of the overall structure. And we're also going to be paying a price going forward of not getting the story of, or at least potentially not getting the story of Michael Afton, allegedly Evan Afton, Elizabeth. Like, what are they going to do? I feel like, so obviously there's going to be more. I think the chances of them not making a sequel are exceedingly slim, but, fool on me if I'm wrong, but if they do a sequel, I think there's really 3 ways that they could go. straight into Five Nights at Freddy's 2, directly into, or actually 4 ways. Sorry, 4 ways they could go. They could go into Five Nights at Freddy's 2. They could jump into Five Nights at Freddy's
3.
For, Springtrap coming back and kind of focusing on like the Fazbear Frights. I feel like they're gonna set up like a theme park or something like that. Jumping straight into Sister Location. At least from my understanding of that, I think it would probably be a good setting for a movie. And then you can bring in like Baby and the Funtime animatronics, or jumping straight to Security Breach. So I think those are the 4 main paths they could take. With the story that they've got so far, jumping to Security Breach I think would be the easiest. Because we've already written out Elizabeth as... We've kind of written Vanessa into the place of all 3 of the Afton children. Which isn't to say you couldn't bring them in, but it would be weird. Again, they could. It just would seem strange. You kind of lose the 3 Afton children. You lose Mike being one of the Aftons, so you can't really pursue their story. And the problem with that is that, Michael Afton is really the closest thing that the FNAF series has to a continuous protagonist. And honestly, he's the most compelling character in the series. I feel like their best bet would probably be to jump into either
3
to do the Fazbear Frights thing, or jumping straight into Security Breach, because Sister Location, you get Baby, who I think is striking and would look very good on like movie posters, but would be difficult to adapt into the story and narrative that they've created. So we'll have to see what they do from there. Like I said, the pacing was off, and I really enjoyed the useless scene. Like, it was so long. It took off such a chunk of time that we did not need to take up. We could have tightened up this movie in so many places. But I really enjoyed the scene, so it's really hard for me to say, like, how to fix that. I can't say just, chop that out and it'll be great, because we miss, like, a really good chunk of just fun stuff. And that's the thing. It's not a good movie. It's a fun movie. So if you're gonna go see the movie, and I recommend, if you haven't already, that you do, go watch it for yourself. It is a fun movie. Just go in with the expectation that you're not going in to see something great. You're not going in to see something that is objectively good. You are going in to have a good time. You're going to go see the silly, scary, jump scare robot game movie. You're going to be trapped in a pizzeria with Josh Hutcherson. It's not something you're going in with serious goggles on to analyze the plot and the themes and the structures. How do we break down these characters and their motivations? Don't try. Just don't try. William Afton has no motivation in the original. Like, in the games, his motivation is kills kids. I think in the books, his motivation is immortality or whatever. Because Remnant. That's the answer for everything in the books, is just because Remnant. And I think that's his motivation. But in the movie and in the games, it's non-existent. And I feel like they could have given him some sort of motivation. And then the other weird thing is that they never bring back the brother. Like, so he makes the deal with the ghosts to have the good dream or find the proof of his brother in exchange for Abby, and they don't give him who took his sister. Or I mean who took his brother. And while we do get confirmation from William Afton that he killed the younger brother, like, he says something like, "I killed your brother and now I'll get to kill you too." It's really awkward. It never really comes back. Like, you never really get to see him as a ghost. My friend Julia pointed out that the imaginary friend that Abby had could have been Garrett, but wasn't. And none of the ghost children are him, so he's just kind of gone. Just gone. Which is weird for a child in Five Nights. They never get to rest. They don't get peace. And the Emilys, that's another thing that we don't get out of this. We don't get absolute king Henry Emily. We don't get Charlie being the one who bound the souls to the robots. And they tried to put Abby in the puppet. So we know that Charlie isn't running around as the puppet. So she's just not in the universe, apparently. So, I don't know. I feel like they just cut out too much and then created other things to take its place that just wasn't quite up to the same standard. That's not to say that the original story is objectively better either. There are certainly so many things that fans have filled in for Scott. I think, especially the theory crafters, like people like Matt Pat. I feel like with this, they weren't thinking ahead. So they weren't thinking, what if we get a second movie? What are we going to be able to do with where we have left this, besides the fact that Vanessa is still alive? We've got that going for us. But what's next? Where does the lore that we have built so far leave us? And kind of lost of it. So I'm curious to see what they might do next. I'm curious to see what the next movie is going to be. It's just a matter of time. I hope we get a Markiplier cameo in the next one, at the very least. Because that man is beautiful and I want to see it on the big screen. But I had a good time. I enjoyed the movie. It has its faults. I also have terrible taste in movies. But all in all, it was fun. I had fun. My friend had fun, and she doesn't even really like Five Nights at Freddy's. She is not invested in it at all, but she still had a good time. So I think, if you're waffling over whether to watch it or not, go watch it. It's like 2 hours of your life. Yeah, you'll never get it back, but it's not a bad use of it. Like, have some popcorn, go with friends, laugh a little bit, cackle at Vanessa like I did. Whether it's in theaters or when it comes out, just buy the movie and watch it yourself. That's totally fine too. I'll probably get the movie myself when it comes out, just so I can rewatch certain scenes. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on the movie as a whole. If you have thoughts of your own, I would love to hear them. Let me know. If you have thoughts on what the next movie might be, or what you would like to see in the next movie, let me know. If you want to see a security breach movie, if you think they should just be doing like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like whatever, give me a shout. Let me know. Drop a comment and give me your piece on that. If you just want them to jump directly to seeing the Glamrock animatronics because they are the coolest animatronics, and you want to see those ones on the big screen, drop a comment. If not, if you want to see them drop, okay. Last thought there. Another one that would be really good would be... I think I've said my numbers wrong. Damn it. I'm gonna have to fix that. 4. So, I meant to say 3. But I think they could also do 4 and do the Nightmare animatronics, because Nightmare animatronics are the ones that are actually scary. And I would love to see those ones on the big screen the other day, an actual scary movie. So, yeah, anyway. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. It was a pleasure having you in the garden again. Don't forget to like the video if you haven't already. Please subscribe as well. Both of those things really help with that whole algorithm nonsense. But thank you guys so much, and I hope you have a safe journey.